Hi, Mom.
Hello on my 77th birthday.
You're pretty darn cute. Hold on, this is a lot. You're very cute. Okay, let me see. Can you, oh yeah, please walk that way. Let me see you coming and going.
Can you see me go?
Oh my goodness. Wait a second.
coming?
Yeah, wait a second. Wait, what did you say? How old? What is it?
77.
We just had that birthday, didn't we? You
Yes,
don't have
we
to come
did.
any closer because I know the camera's gonna drop.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
That was a pretty
And I
awesome.
can still do it all.
Yes, you can.
Yes, I can.
Hello.
And
Oh,
there's
look
my
at you.
favorite one. Look at that.
Stay with her for 1 second. Stay where you are.
Hello, my 25.
Yeah, really. My mother just did the Ruthie strut at age 77. I'm not going to say how old I am. She's 77. We're not doing any math.
She's 27.
Yeah, of course. No, I don't think so. But soon to be great grandmother. And Daniel?
Hello.
Hello, honey. All right, so I wanted to ask you some questions while you're standing here.
No, stay there.
While you're standing there, I have a. This
You
is
pose me.
you know you need it. You know how to do it all yourself. What is truly amazing to me is that how do you know how to do all this? Where'd you learn?
In another life.
Why? What happened in your life?
It was my life in another time.
Oh, okay. That's true.
I had many lives. Many, many, many lives.
How in this most recent life, though, how could you have possibly learned it? Where? How did you grow up? Tell
I
me.
learned nothing when I grew up. I grew up on the streets of Shanghai.
Yeah.
And I started fending for myself when I was 3. By
Yeah.
the time I was 7, I was grown up. And I knew how to get it done.
Yes, you did.
It was rainy all the time, typhoons. And in the winter it was very, very cold and very, very wet. And Shanghai was very, very poor. And if you did have gloves, which of course I never did, the Chinese would steal it. You know, the street kids.
Yeah.
They would come after anything you had. So I learned at a very early age to defend myself.
Yeah. What did you?
And I became a businesswoman too.
Yeah.
Well, by the time I was probably 7, I found this guy they called a White Russian. And he would come off his night shift when I was going to school. And he'd have these big loaves of bread, which the Chinese called mipo. And he thought I was very precocious, so he would give me a piece of bread about yay big. I would then find a Chinese coolie with a rickshaw, and I'd ask him if he wants some mipo. And of course, they would kill for the mipo. So I became the first businesswoman, my first business venture. I would give him the mipo for a ride to school every morning. Parents would gladly pay to have their children get to school without being attacked.
Wow.
That was my first business venture. So
Yeah.
None of us had anything.
Yeah.
So if there was anything to be had,
Yeah.
kids would kill for it.
Of course. Yeah.
And I learned to do the same.
Yeah.
I remember one time I got into a street fight on my way to school, and there was a big circle of people, Chinese and Germans, Jews, whatever. They were all standing around rooting. And a doctor that my mother worked with by the name of Dr. Dietner, went to see what's going on. And then he relayed the story to my mother. He said, there was a kid on the ground, and Ruth was on top of him, beating the willies out of him. I pulled them apart. He was a Chinese kid wanting something I had. I don't know what I had. Maybe I was wearing shoes.
Yeah.
I never had any gloves because I remember getting beaten on my hands with what do they call those long?
A
yardstick.
Right.
For every minute I was late. I was late coming to school because I had to make a few detours. And I got there maybe 10 minutes late, and my teacher took out a yardstick about, I
Yeah.
guess, 3 feet long,
Yeah.
and he would go and give me as many lashes over my hand on one side and the other side. My hands were frostbitten.
Okay.
Anyhow, then my father at the time, this was my third father,
Yeah. What was his name again?
Heinrich
Okay.
Friedlander.
Okay.
And he was my mother's third husband.
Yeah.
And when he found out what my teacher did to me, he went to school, and it was one of those iron fences at the school.
Yeah, like an iron gate.
An iron gate, right.
Right.
And he picked the teacher up by his, what do they call it, collar,
Yeah.
and hung him on there for as many minutes as he gave me smacks on my hand. Left him hanging there. Didn't touch him.
How old were you?
About 8, I was in 2nd grade, maybe 7, I don't know.
Wow. So when
It
you
was before I was in business.
before you were that probably they say necessity is the mother of invention. So
You want me to tell you what I did before then?
I want to hear everything.
Well, I can't think of everything.
No,
but
no. As
things
it
come
comes to
into
your
mind.
mind, I want to hear it. Of course.
Well, most of the mothers would drop their children off whenever possible, and certainly when the sirens came, that meant that we're being attacked.
Right.
And everybody started running home. The mothers would come and get them. My mother and my father were both working in the hospital, so nobody came for us.
Right.
My sister was in kindergarten. She was 2 years younger than me, 2.5 years younger than me. So I was the one in charge. So I would pick a mother who was picking up her child, but every mother was for herself
Of
and
course.
her child. And I'd stay about maybe 10, 15 steps behind her.
Yeah.
And I would follow her in case she
Yeah.
knew a better route than I did.
Right.
And she got to the door, the entrance of the building that I lived in. They call it the Bayside Heim. That means it was a home, which was a school that was converted into big rooms with sections of a room for everybody. Anyhow, the entrance to it. And she got there maybe 10 seconds before I did, maybe 15, I don't know. As she's going through the door, pulling little, what was his name? I think his name was Heinrich. I think it was
You told me
Heinrich,
his name.
something
Wasn't
like that.
Gunther Gruner?
Yes, that was her last name.
You
The
told
last
me.
name was Grün. But the first name, it fails me right now. Anyhow, as she got to the door, a piece of shrapnel came down and split her in half. There she's laying, and I've got my sister on one hand running, trying to get in. I picked up the little boy on the other hand. Mind you, I was maybe 5 or 6, and we got in while she was laying there, split open.
Oh my God.
That's when I knew I needed to get into business
Really? Oh
to
wow.
protect these little children.
Wow.
I can go on and on and on, but
I
what's
know.
the point?
We have 5 more minutes.
Nah, we'll finish it another time.
Okay, I wanted to ask you just what was the house like that you lived in? Like what? It was one big room, right? And there were
It was
curtains.
a schoolroom, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a curtain between each set of beds. The
Right.
parents lived usually on the bottom bed, and the kids lived on the top bed. There was no lavatory in the building, you'd go outside, and that's where you made. Of course, in the middle of the night, you don't go maybe a city block to go to the bathroom, so you had a little potty standing there.
Mm-hmm. No kitchen?
No kitchen, no. You had, what we have, like little flower pots, and you could, if you can get some coals, you'd put it in and try to cook something. But I don't really remember eating it at home any time. My mother would bring me a handful of something, and we'd eat it, whatever.
And what did you
There
do
were
for
no real
water?
meals. Well, that was a big problem because you couldn't drink the water in China. So water was a big problem. In the morning, I would go to a Chinese store they called the Große, the big one, and there was eine Kleine. And what they did is nothing but boil water. And they ladled it out into pots that you would bring there for them to fill, and they charge you a few pennies for each ladle.
Yeah.
I would bring that pot home, about maybe like 2 city blocks, and my mother would make some instant coffee out of it, for her and her husband.
Right.
And I would wash my beautiful face in it. That's why I have such a great complexion. Notice I have a very good complexion.
Let me zoom in on that gorgeous complexion. Yeah, it's ridiculous, Mom. I want that.
It came from coffee.
You
Coffee
know-
is really good for you. I wouldn't advise it.
A little step. Yeah, that's perfect. There,
I
stay,
would not
stay.
really advise it. But I was raised on coffee. I
Yeah.
love coffee.
You still do?
I'm still addicted to coffee.
Yeah.
It has to be brewed now with
Yeah.
the best coffee beans I can buy.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Well, one time I was really, really thirsty.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not allowed to drink water. It was during the day, and I guess I was playing or going through one of those, it was after a typhoon and there was lots of water on the ground.
Right.
We used to play in that water filled with every kind of debris you can think of. But I was really thirsty, and I was so thirsty I just didn't know what to do. So I went into the public room where they had wash basins where you could wash your clothes, and I looked to make sure nobody was looking. And then I climbed up on the sink, put my mouth under it, and drank the water. And then I waited to die because it was totally contaminated.
Right.
People were dying left and right from dysentery.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
My second father died of dysentery. I watched him die. I went to see him in this ward where he was in the hospital, and I can't even describe what was laying there. I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
But I was so thirsty, I overcame that
Yeah.
and went and drank the water.
And you didn't die.
No, my angels saved me. But I waited for about a week, and then I said, oh, they forgot me.
Tell me about the parades.
Well, there were parades. At one point, one of his soldiers accidentally or on purpose stuck a bayonet in me. It didn't hurt me very much. But from that time on, I was the pet. I got passes for my parents, my grandparents, and he would send somebody to pick me up. I would visit with him.
It was the Japanese general. Right, it was the Japanese.
Because basically, I would be there when he was judging people, and he would bring these people in because maybe they stole an apple, or it was either a Caucasian visitor or it was a Chinese person. And I would sit on his lap, and he would wait for me to say up or down. Most of the time I said up, because I didn't want to be responsible for anybody dying. But every so often, I had to say down or he wouldn't let me do it. If I sit down, they went to heaven.
How old were you?
Maybe 6 or 7. I don't know exactly.
Well,
It was not a good thing. I mean, the Japanese were invading Shanghai. They hated each other. We were caught right in the middle, so, to me, they were all people. They were all people, just like us. I couldn't tell the difference. I had friends that were Japanese and friends that were Chinese, and I really didn't know the difference. They were all the same. Except when they came marching down with their bayonets, and anything that got in their way, they'd stab. Anything. And the only thing I was worried about was my grandmother. I always worried about her.
where did she live?
She lived in Vatrotheim. That means Ward Road Home.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't too far from Weissenheim.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very old already. I don't know, not as old as I am now, but you know, she was an old lady. But, and she would have a little stove that she would stand there and fan,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so little, and she'd get paid for it.
Really?
Yep. She was probably only in her 50s, but
Different world, different life.
different world, different time.
Yeah.
And I got a pass to go to the French zone from whoever he was.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember getting on the bus. You know, it was not a bus, it was like a trolley car that they stuffed people in.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on, and my grandmother wasn't on. And I screamed and yelled and ranted and pulled and tugged at everybody. I kicked him. I did everything until he stopped and let my grandmother on. And I pulled her up.
Yeah.
In the French zone, we used to get an ice cream cone.
Wow.
I don't know who they were, Americans or Russians or whatever. We were the refugees, so they gave us an ice cream cone. And I shared it with my grandmother. I can go on for hours. It's not important. None of it is important.
It's all
Actually, nothing bad ever happened. I remember it, and I think it was just a great experience. It taught me so much.
Mm-hmm.
I can survive anywhere. You can do anything to me and I'd survive. Well,
Don't test it.
I won't test it.
Next time we'll talk about your strawberries, the birthday party.
Under the bed?
Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to talk about that. The
And
bombs were falling, the lights were out, and we had some strawberries with one candle
pretty
under the bed.
special.
It was a cot. It wasn't like a real bed.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
The roses and stuff.
I love it.
I love it. Okay.
Oh, how come I'm so short?
Yes, that light was on the right day, not that Maggie's back in town. Look out, Maggie's home.
This is in Klagenfurt at New Year's. This is that's the shot.